they all have one thing in common. Rich women, poor women, white women, black women, tall women, short women, skinny women, fat women. They all have one thing in common. Do you know what that is? You know what the one thing all women, pretty much, especially my generation, millennial women, have in common? Regardless of where they're from, how they were raised, how rich, how poor, how famous they are, whatever. You know what the one thing they have in common is? They can't keep a man, okay? It doesn't matter who they are. For the most part, they cannot keep a man. I used to get kind of bent out of shape when I would break up with a girl and, a couple weeks would go by, a couple months would go by, and I'd be like, they're probably going to find some new guy and be happy with him and move on, and everything's going to be honky-dory, and they're going to be living the life. But as months and years go on, I see them go through guy after guy after me, right? And they can't hold on to any of them. So what does that mean? Was I really the problem? Men, were you really the problem in your divorces and in your breakups? Or was she the problem? Because if you were such a bad guy the way she says you are, because every girl I've dated, when we break up, they say I'm the devil. They say I'm the worst, horrible guy, whatever, that they've ever dealt with, right? But for some reason, all of those great guys you met after me that you rub in my face, because, girls I break up with, they'll go date another guy, and then they'll try to rub him in my face and be like, look, I'm so happy with this guy or whatever. But then guess what? Your relationship with that guy doesn't work out either. So what does that say about you? Are we really the problem, or are you the problem? And I know women can put a twist on it and say, well, if that was the case, you guys would be happy with someone else either. No, that's not true. Or if that doesn't make sense because, you guys are still single just like us. That's not really necessarily the truth because women initiate 70 to 80% of all divorces and breakups, right? So the guy was content. The guy was chilling. The guy was kind of like at peace. And something about you was just riled up and something about you had to create some drama. Something about you had to stir up the pot, right? And break things off, And here's the thing. I've only ever had one girl break up with me, and that was my first girlfriend, right? I broke up with the rest of them. But technically, if you really want to really be precise about it, they broke up with me. Do you know why? Because they did something that forced me to have to break up with them. They started a ridiculous fight out of nowhere. They started having unreasonable demands that were just, that Jesus Christ himself couldn't meet, So in a way, they broke something. They destroyed something that forced me to end it. They became too toxic. They become too unbearable, to where I had to cut things off, because the poison they were injecting into me was just too much. I had to drain the snake venom, and cut them out of my life. So technically, every girl I've ever been with has broke up with me, if you think about it, because she did something. She was the catalyst for some string of events that forced me to remove myself from her, right? But here's the thing. None of them can keep a man. Famous women, so these celebrities that these women look up to. Look, being with a guy for 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, that's nothing. That doesn't count. If you haven't been with a guy for 10, 15, 20 years, married to him, you really haven't been in a successful, relationship with a man. None of these women, none of your ex-girlfriends, all the guys listening, think about the girls you've dated and they've moved on after you. How long did they last with the guy they dated after you? 3 months, 6 months? And then the guy they dated after the guy that they left you for or whatever, They go through 5, 10, 20 guys after you and they can't hold on to any of them. Do you know why? Because something is wrong with them. They are never content. They're always chasing something. So don't feel bad. Don't feel guilty. Don't feel dirty. If a relationship you had with a woman ended. Because 99.8%, there's a 99.8% chance she's going to repeat that cycle with the next 20 guys. She cannot, something about her is broken, and she cannot hold on to a man. She cannot be good enough to be in a long-term relationship with a man. And like I said, a long-term relationship is not 6 months or 2 years. A long-term relationship is 15, 20, 30 years. That's how they used to do it back in the old days, right? How come none of these women these days can hold on to a man for that long? Because there is something wrong with them. We as men know we know we can hold on to it. We're chill. We're consistent. We're like, yep, I got everything under control. My emotions are all under control. I've got the money situated. Everything's good. We are ready to to be in this thing for the long haul, right? But they're not. Something about them is always shaking and stirring, you know? There's like a little tornado going on inside her chest 24/7, and she's got to feed that beast, you know? Eventually that tornado just comes out of her and she has to create havoc in your life. And she'll either leave you or she'll put you in a situation where you're forced to leave her, which is what happened to me every time. I was always forced to remove myself from them because eventually after 6 months, a year, they become so crazy. And as time goes on, they become crazier and crazier. How come when I'm in a relationship with a woman, I'm the same guy that I was on day one, on day 100? You know, on day 1000, I'm the same guy as I was on day one. I'm not getting crazier as the months go on. You know, I'm not getting more unstable as the months go on. But for some reason, every waking day that goes by, she becomes crazier and crazier, and new sides of her that I've never seen before come out. You know, new tentacles come out of the octopus like every day. Weird little things you've never seen before. Right? So if these women were so much better than you and they don't need you, they'd be able to hold on to the next guy after you. The fact that they cannot hold on to a man to save their life screams that they are the problem. You see what I'm saying? Because they always threaten you. I'm going to find someone better than you. I'm going to, oh, this guy can make me happier. Drake wouldn't treat me like that. I love that. I've had girls tell me, Drake wouldn't treat me like that. I had a girl that I broke up with say, I want a boy like Jack from Titanic. You need to be like Jack from Titanic. And I'm like, baby, there's the door. Walk out of it. I pray to God that you find Jack from Titanic, because I know you're not going to find Jack from Titanic. Because guess what? Leonardo DiCaprio, the actor that plays Jack from Titanic, he doesn't even want to marry a woman. He's a big Hollywood star, and he sees this thing for what it is. So if no woman can get him, how are you going to get Jack from Titanic, you know? And the fact that that's your standard, it blows my mind, because you're so unrealistic. You're just setting yourself up for disappointment. But this is really geared more towards men. I want you guys to not feel so bad about past relationships that didn't work out, because if you were really the problem, she would be happy with another guy after you, and she would be married and committed and with him for 10, 15, 20 years. Okay, dating a guy for a year after you, that doesn't count. Dating a guy for 2, 3 years after you, that doesn't count. That's really just a long-term hookup. That's not her happily ever after, that she's chasing so hard that you were not able to fulfill. Something about her inside, she's not able to fulfill herself, right? You have to love yourself before you can love someone else, right? So she's not fulfilled with herself. Now, it's too painful for her to admit that to herself. It's much easier to dump all of that blame on you as the man, right, and say you're the problem. And you know what? She can get away with that in the short term, but in the long term, she's going to suffer, because she's going to go from guy to guy to guy, and she's not going to be able to stick with any of them, And she's just going to keep racking up that body count, putting more miles on that car, building up that baggage, and then she's going to be, setting herself up for spinsterhood. So, the moral of the story is they all have one thing in common, There's one problem they all have, and that's that they can't keep a man.